This is such a good morning. And we're happy for everybody who came to church because there's so many people away on vacation. I know it's baseball season, but I want to talk about a football player. Who has heard of Jerry Rice? Lots of hands. Well, I didn't meet Jerry Rice. I'm, not personally, but playing football, but I saw him on Dancing with the Stars, and he was really good. Today, Jerry Rice is a football analyst, but in his playing days, he was considered one of the greatest pass catchers, and some people think that he was even the greatest football player ever. Do you know what school he went to? Does anybody know? You would have thought that Jerry Rice, who's one of the best football players in the history of football, would have went to Notre Dame or Texas or Clemson or Alabama, but he didn't. He played for Mississippi Valley State University in Itta Betta, Mississippi, a virtual unknown school. He was asked, of course, why would you attend such a small, obscure university when he could have went to one of those big-time schools? And here was his response. Out of all the big-time schools to recruit me, Mississippi Valley State University was the only school who paid me a personal visit and came to my house. The others recruited him through letters and cards and advertisements, but there was only one school that came to his house, and that's the one he went to. It makes a difference in this world when we meet people face to face and eye to eye and invite them to be a part of what we're doing. In our scripture lesson this morning, Jesus is walking down the shore of Galilee, and he sees two brothers, Simon and Andrew, and they're fishing. They're casting their nets. They weren't community leaders. They weren't influential people. They weren't rich people. But Jesus approaches them and invites him to be a part of their ministry. They drop everything they're doing, and they follow him. Then he walks a little further, and he sees James and John, two ordinary fishermen, people like you and me. And he walks up to them and extends the same invitation. Come follow me. Personal touch is what attracts people. Advertising is so impersonal. Robocalls are the worst. The other day we got 3 phone calls from the same number within 5 minutes. The first one, you're entitled to a new credit card with a lower rate. Sound familiar? The next 2 calls, we didn't even answer the phone. Contrast that with meeting someone in person. That can make a big difference. These humble fishermen responded to Jesus because he was there and called them, and they traveled with him to the cross and beyond. The great theologian Karl Barth notes that the disciples are called simply by the fact that Jesus claims them. Their new status is anchored in the fact that Jesus fished for them. Jesus is the ultimate fisherman, and they are the netted fish. In the obedient response of the 2 sets of brothers, the reign of God is actualized here on earth in the present. Jesus claims us as well. You and I are called to become Jesus' disciples, to take our place as part of the team. The Mbuti tribe, who is in Africa, commonly known as the Pygmies, have a unique way of making music, which serves to strengthen tribal bonds. The men whittle pipes out of soft wood, and each pipe can only play one note. So someone will whittle an A, someone else a D, someone else an F sharp. And that's the only note that they can play. It's kind of like the church bell choir, where you can only play one at a time. But all must work together to create music. If one person is missing from the group, the music is not complete, lacking in harmony and richness. That's a good metaphor for the church, the disciples of Jesus. Imagine if every member of this church played one flute or one bell, one note, and we were all here and we could produce a symphony. Jesus, Cindy would love that. Jesus tells us that our calling is to fish for people, to bring others to discipleship, to tell people about how God's love has changed our lives, and to help people find a closer relationship with Jesus Christ. Sometimes that calling puts us on the spot. There was an old man sitting at the river bank, and he had his fishing pole out. And he saw, and this was before fishing season, he saw an officer come in a uniform, stand behind him. The old man said, "You the fish warden?" The man said, "Yep." So he took his pole up and he said, "Just teaching this worm how to swim." You are a disciple of Jesus Christ. Are you fishing for people, or are you just teaching your worm how to swim? Consider Jesus' first and last words to Peter. Jesus lived 3 years with his disciples. He walked with them. He talked with them. They ate together. They slept in the same place. Yet it was difficult for the disciples to make the transition from a Messiah who would be a mighty king of the Jews to a Messiah who would die for the sins of humanity. Jesus never wavered once from his mission. Throughout his entire ministry among the people and his training of the disciples, he held his heart this hope, that Peter and the rest of the disciples would lose their earthly ambitions and become feeders of people and fishers of men. The very first words when he met Peter, Jesus said, "Follow me, and I will make you fish for people." And his last words, again down at the waters of the Sea of Galilee, after his resurrection, were, "Feed my sheep, follow me." From beginning to end, that was the mission of the church. Now, can you imagine a fishing club where the members just sit around talking about fish stories, about the big one that got away? What kind of fishing club would that be if some of those members never even went fishing, but just talked about it? A lot of Christians are in that club. They may talk a lot about going fishing. They may look back fondly at the good old days when they used to go fishing, but they don't fish. What about you? By its God-given calling, the church is a fishing club. Are you ready to go fishing? My husband and I have been privileged to hear Dr. Tony Campolo preach at the Great Auditorium. I think he died, but he was a professor at Eastern University, and he told this story. He used to have a program in the summer where he would get teenagers to work in the inner city of Philadelphia. He told this story about a high school senior named Paul, who responded to Tony's call to work in the mission field that summer. The program began with 100 teenagers gathering in a Baptist church in Philadelphia. For an hour, they sang songs, listened to Dr. Campolo talk about their calling. They were all fired up. And Tony said, "Okay, kids, are you ready to go out there and tell them about Jesus?" And they all said, "Yes." Then they got in the bus. And the bus went through Philadelphia from one worse neighborhood to the next. They were silent. They weren't laughing and singing anymore. They were scared to death. Dr. Campolo met them as they got off the bus, and he said, "All right, gang, go out and tell them about Jesus, and I'll be here on this corner at 5 o'clock. Paul walked into the huge tenement that was right there, and his heart was racing. He stopped at a door where he heard a baby crying, and he knocked. A woman answered, "Who's there?" Then she opened the door just a crack. She had a naked baby in one hand and a cigarette in the other. And she said, "What do you want?" And Paul humbly answered, I want to tell you about Jesus." The woman was furious. She opened the door, was screaming at him and cursing at him. Paul ran out of the building, down the stairs, sat on the curb, and he just cried. He thought to himself, "What am I doing here?" And then he looked, and across the street was a store. It had boarded up windows and bars on the door, but it had an open sign. He went in the store. He bought a box of Pampers and a carton of cigarettes. Took a deep breath, said a prayer, walked back into that building, and this time when he knocked on the door and it opened a crack, he slipped in the box of Pampers and the carton of cigarettes. The woman opened the door, and instead of cursing at him, she invited him to come inside. Paul sat on the sofa and played with the baby. He even changed the baby's diaper, something he had never done in his life. Then she offered him a cigarette. He said yes, even though he had never smoked a cigarette in his life. And he stayed all afternoon listening to the woman as she told him what it was like being a single mother raising a baby in the housing project in inner city Philadelphia. Finally, she asked, "What's a nice college boy like you doing in a place like this?" And he told her everything he knew about Jesus. Took him all of about 5 minutes. The woman responded, "Can you pray for me and my baby that we make it out of here alive?" And he prayed for her. That night, when they were back in the church, Tony Campolo asked the group, "Well, gang, did you tell them about Jesus?" So Paul raised his hand. He said, "I not only got to tell about Jesus, today I met Jesus. Today I became a disciple." So what about you? Are you ready for a new pastor and new challenges and new possibilities and some opportunities for some wonderful new things? Jesus is calling you to go out fishing, to make disciples, to share his love with people who desperately need it. What would it take for you to get out of the boat, out on the water? What would it take for you to cast your net into the sea? "Follow me," Jesus said. and I will help you fish for people. Happy fishing!